Welcome to the Women Living Well After 50 podcast. I'm Sulon Carrick and I'm passionate about inspiring, motivating, supporting and informing women over 50 to embrace this exciting time of life. Health and wellness in mind, body and spirit are the foundations for living well, but there is so much more to a life well lived. Each week, through conversations with my guests, I'll be presenting topics that will help us all to live well and enjoy life. So join me as we discover new ways to become women living well after 50. Are you ready to start living? What are you waiting for? Let's get started. Welcome to another episode of the Women Living Well After 50 podcast. I'm Sulon Carrick and it's lovely to have you join me. Cutting-edge scientific research confirms that a strong, healthy gut microbiome is the holy grail of human wealth, overall wellness and resistance to disease. When it flourishes, you flourish. When it struggles, you struggle. And there's much that can be done to ensure your gut is kept in tip-top shape. My guest today is Gut Health Practitioner and Nutritionist Natalie Woodman. Natalie has years of clinical experience and has worked with hundreds of clients, transforming their health by interventions targeting their microbiome. She has specialised in women over 50, helping them to learn to manage their biggest concerns, including the ability to reach and maintain healthy weight despite eating well and exercising. In addition to digestive disorders, hormonal imbalances, fatigue, metabolic syndrome, thyroid and mood disorders, which are all symptomatic of an imbalanced gut microbiome. With her clinical experience and keen analytical mind and engaging narrative ability to both answer questions and crystallize complex situations and processes, Natalie's observations and insights into this cutting-edge health-critical topic will help us to know how to take better care of our bodies from within. So let's go and join the conversation. Welcome, Natalie. I'm delighted to have you join me for the episode of Women Living Well After 50 podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I'm excited to chat to you today because the topic that we're going to be talking about is something that we hear a lot about, but I think people sort of brush it off because, it's all too hard to understand or it's all too scientific for me. And, if we did understand it a little bit better, we'd all be healthier. So as I said in the introduction, we're going to be talking about the gut microbiome. And, you're an expert in here in that area. And so I'm really happy that you've joined me today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. And yeah, I totally get it. It's one of those topics, you hear the gut microbiome and it sounds, and when you really sort of look at the scientific evidence and you look at it that way, but I suppose my role bringing it to people is about making it understandable so that it fits into something that's doable rather than something that's just abstract. So I think that's what's really important is how do we do it? I think we all know what healthy living looks like. I don't think there's any surprise about that, but how do we do it and how does that fit in terms of the gut microbiome? What is it? How does it work? What do we need to look after it?
Yes, and it's certainly gained a lot of interest over the last few years. So, and I'm really interested in finding out more myself because I'd probably throw myself into it's a little bit too hard to get my head around that category. But before we start that, I'd love you to share a little bit about yourself and a little bit of your background with the listeners.
Okay. Well, I started out as I'm a Perth born and bred girl, and I started out as a speech and drama teacher in high school. God knows why, because I really didn't actually like school. But anyway, I was a speech and drama teacher, and then my husband and I got married at university. And when we got out, we sort of thought, that was in the 80s when going to Japan was a really big thing. So we went to Japan for a year with our 15-month-old son, who's now 35. And we thought we'll stay for a year. My husband's Canadian, so we thought we'll go there and then Canada. Anyway, 15 years later of being in Japan and one kid going to 3 kids and 2 cats and a house full of furniture and a couple of cars, we came back to Australia. And I think in Japan, I was even though we ran an English school, so we had our own English school with sort of three locations, and it was pretty busy. The lifestyle there of riding our bikes everywhere, we did get cars eventually, but just the lifestyle there, even though it's busy, but with the downtime and the diet, obviously the diet is just amazing in Japan. We were really very healthy, and then came back here when I was about 37. And not that we were, eating pies, pasties and sausage rolls and downing Cokes and all the rest of it, but really just going into more of a Western style diet. By the time I was about 42, I went into early menopause at 42, which is quite young. And I was suffering. I started putting on weight, and I'm a small frame. So for me, it was nearly 15 kilos. It was quite significant, especially in that central area. I developed like chronic eczema. I think we were looking at photos on the weekend, and I was at someone's party and I had ice blocks on my arms, and it was the only way I could stop the itching was to just keep applying ice. I was chronic back pain until the point was that when I was about 44, 45, I think it was, I would go down for 2 weeks. I couldn't walk. I mean, literally, I had to have people cook, clean, do everything for me, take me to the bathroom, take me to the shower. And one night I went to go to the loo. My husband said, well, look, I'll just stand in the doorway. I couldn't even stand bright light because it was just so debilitating because the pain was so bad. And next minute I went to sit down like I hadn't started anything, but I passed out, went through the shower screen and slipped through my forehead and my eye. Anyway, next minute was, and it was interesting because the ambulance came and they were like, oh, we could just pull you out and get you up, like sit up and get you on the stretcher. And I said, well, the head's not the problem. I can't move. I had spasmed so badly that anyway, so hospitalized, did all that, came back, and I just thought, this can't be it. So I started seeing like doctors and, did acupuncture, all the rest of it. And they sort of said, look, this is sort of, you're aging. This is it. And I'm thinking 46 and I'm aging, like this is my life. So I thought, no, this is ridiculous. I'm missing something here. I don't know what it is, but I really felt that something, my gut, even though it was in a terrible condition, was saying what was going on. So I went back to uni and started doing nutrition. And I just happened to fall over a book by a gastroenterologist in America called Robin Chutum, and I'm sure I'm not saying her name right. Sorry, Robin. And it was all about the gut microbiome. And she was a gastroenterologist that really had gone down that very, as a doctor, the GP route of anti-inflammatories and all the things. And she treated a lot of IBS and IBD and Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, all of that. And read about the gut microbiome, and it just, honestly, it was like, like Oprah used to do that moment. And I thought, oh my God, this is what it is. And so I started looking at not just diet, but lifestyle, and started putting together all the things around diet and lifestyle that helped a flourishing gut microbiome. And within about, it was less than 3 years, and I was in a pretty dark state, like mentally, physically, everything. And basically it was just back to being not walking. I'm now nearly 60. I turned 60 this year, and I don't have any pain, zero. And they were telling me it's arthritis, osteoarthritis, it's this, it's that, this is your lot in life. This is eczema. You've got a skin condition, probably get over it. Well, we all put on a bit of weight in our 50s, it comes with menopause, all the stories that we're told that this is your lot in life. And it isn't. I'm an example of, now I've got, like yourself, I saw you running with your grandchildren. I've got 3 grandchildren. I'm picking them up and moving and doing things that I couldn't even do with my own children. And I really thought, okay, this is the message to women out there about sort of like, oh, well, it's sort of like, you up the roller coaster road up to there, and then it's just like, boom, down.
Yes.
From there on is not true. And so then I thought, right, where I want to do is my practice is mostly women. I mean, not that, I don't like treating men, but women, women is my passion. Yes. Women, especially in their, getting perimenopause, menopause, 40s, 50s, 60s. and really showing them that this isn't their lot in life. And, you know, I've had clients now, you know, over the past 10 years, over 600 clients around the world that have rebalanced their gut microbiome. And I'll go into what that is in a moment, and have been told, you know, yeah, this is your lot in life and this is what you've got. And they were, you know, debilitating aches, pains and overweight and everything, and back to living a normal life. And so it's kind of hard to understand. I think, you know, I talk to clients all the day and they sort of think, yeah, is this sort of some sort of, you know, am I getting roped into something here? Because that sort of seems impossible. And I was the same way when I started reading about it and doing, I thought, yeah, okay, this seems to be the impossible. How do you go from chronic back pain where you can't walk to now, I mean, I've just come from the gym this morning. I do Jacob's ladder. I do, you know, walk. I've got kids, you know, one kid, a baby here, a toddler here, a kid on my back. And I couldn't have imagined that. So I think for a lot of women who get to that state where they're really poor health, can't imagine that's possible.
Yes.
And the model out there says, well, it kind of, that's your lot in life. So yeah, so that's sort of my story and how I became how I did. And I'm just really passionate of explaining what it is and how people can change their life.
Yes. Well, you know, you're a great ambassador because one, you've walked in those shoes, or you couldn't walk because of your back pain, and I know what that's like because I've had back pain myself over the years. But the other thing, I'm looking at you and you're glowing. Your skin is clear, and I can see a glow to your skin. So you are, you know, you can tell that you're very healthy. And I think that it does show on the outside. Whatever's happening on the inside shows on the outside.
Also, I mean, I really appreciate you saying that, you know, my skin is glowing, all the rest of it. A lot of people go, oh, well, you know, she's probably got makeup on, all the rest of it. Now, I do have mascara on, but I have got no makeup. I've got no rouge, no foundation. I don't even, it's not in my, so back in my 40s, I would have to, going somewhere, I'd think, oh, I've got to put something on. My skin it was almost ruddy. It was just no color, whatever. And so, and this is the thing about the gut microbiome, it feeds everybody. It's, you know, I mean, they're trying to get it classed as the, you know, the body's major organ, which is now, you know, skin. I mean, the largest organ is skin. We think about liver because it's the biggest sort of tissue organ, but our skin is, and they're trying to get it classed because they've realized now that it's got to do, and like you said, it's become such a big thing in the last couple of years because it's almost like they've discovered it, but now the research is coming out going, it's linked to eczema, asthma, obesity, rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis, endometriosis, PMS, menopause. I mean, it just, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, it's, everything is like, it just goes, doom, gut microbiome, gut microbiome. And they didn't know a lot about it. And the research is kind of still in its infancy. I mean, the last 5 years is probably 95% of it has come out, but yeah, I think people have no idea that, what it is and how it works.
Yeah. So that will be my next question. But I just wanted to say that there's nothing worse, you know, especially for women, perimenopausal or menopausal or even post, where you know something's not quite right. And I was actually had a guest last week who is a doctor in the States, and she was a GP, and she has turned to functional medicine because she said all I was doing was writing out prescriptions for medication, and we weren't actually, you know, and the message from her and what I'm getting from you too is that we need to take control of our health. And if we feel that we go to the doctor and we're just getting this you know, response of, oh, well, sorry, that's just the way it is. Oh, you're menopausal. Of course you're going to be feeling that way or whatever, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel. We need to feel confident enough in ourselves to say, well, there's got to be an answer, and to try to look. And that's why I love having guests like yourself on the show because, you know, we're sharing knowledge for women who, there could be someone out there today listening and going, oh, my God, I need Natalie, you know. So I think
also there's a light at the end of the tunnel, like you know, that it's not your end of life, it's your start of life. I feel like my life has just really begun. I mean, I probably lost a good, 10 years of chronic pain. And
Yeah.
I really thought that was it.
Yeah, and the thing is, we're living longer and we want to make the most of it. And also, I think if you feel there's no light or there's no help, it affects you mentally. Your mental health is really affected as well.
Yeah.
And you just lose, you just sort of sit around waiting to die, really, because you lose that zest for life and enthusiasm. So what I want to ask you is a basic question, and I know that you can answer it in layman's terms. Because I'll just tell you a funny thing. I used to work for a biotech company, and I wasn't a scientist. I was, anyway, in one of the departments. And I used to chat to the scientists there and ask them about their work and so forth. And they couldn't talk in layman's terms. They'd go all around. And so I picked up a few little snippets of words here and there, so I'd sound like I knew what I was talking about.
Right.
But they, so after a while your eyes glaze over because you can't understand what they're saying. So what exactly is it when we say the gut microbiome?
Okay, right. So yes, I think these years of speech and drama teaching and trying to get a message across to 15-year-olds probably put me in good stead in teaching about everything. But basically if we look at our body, if we tore it down the middle and opened up, you wouldn't see cells, but you'd see organs. You'd see a heart and a liver and all the rest of it. But it's made up of every single little bit. If you think of a piece of paper, the piece of paper is made up of little tiny pieces that have just merged together. And it looks like a paper. So in our body, we've got, let's say, 110 trillion cells. So you couldn't even look up at the Milky Way and see that many stars in the sky. So we've got, trillions of cells. And what they've discovered that 90% of those cells, that is about 100 trillion, are our gut microbiome. That is microbes, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, all the rest of it. So people sort of get that concept of like, well, how can we be a bacteria? How does that work? Well, at the very, very heart of thing, like our soil is microbes. A healthy soil is just a collection of bacteria and stuff that holds it together. So what are microbes? So they discovered that we were microbes. And I suppose most people understand it in terms of what we call probiotics, when we look at our yogurt or something like that. So we're a collection of different types. So we look at, I always use the analogy of a garden. So our gut microbiome is what's happening in our gastrointestinal tract from our mouth through to our anus. And basically that's our gut microbiome. But we also have a skin microbiome, an oral microbiome, a urogenital microbiome, a lung microbiome. So we have lots of mini microbes, but our main microbiome is in our gut. And what happens is it's like the large intestines of our gut, right down the very bottom, is where they all reside. So 70 to 90% of them reside there. So think about it as little microbes in your soil. So all these little bacteria are sitting there, but they're alive and they need to eat. So there's lactobacillus, but there's lactobacillus acidophilus, rhamnosus, plantarum. There's all these subspecies. So it's like basil. You've got basil, but there's Thai basil, lemon basil, all those subspecies. So if you look at every single one of those like a plant and those wonderful substrates, Bifidobacterium, longan, SPP, lactus. There's lots of different types. Bacteroides. There's endless, and there's thousands that they've named, and they said there's tens of thousands more that they haven't even discovered. And each one of these resides in your gut. And when you send food down, it eats it. They ferment the food, so they ferment the fiber essentially. So they live off 99% fiber and 1% protein. So protein diets don't work for your gut microbiome, like keto diets and things like that, because it doesn't feed your microbiome. So just the same thing. You've got a plant in the garden. It's got its basis, so i.e. it lives in the soil. But if it's not fed with water, sunlight, etc., then it dies. And so what we've found with our gut microbiome is all these little bacteria reside there. We send fiber down into them. They take that fiber, they ferment it. So just think of them as like making sauerkraut in your gut. They're making sauerkraut in your gut, and they produce these short chain fatty acids. And so think of those as basically the plants coming up, and it's like giving the capsicum plant's giving you a capsicum, and the carrot's giving you a carrot. So it's providing food, but what it's doing is it's providing a source of energy for your body. So this is where these short chain fatty acids, these little bits of glitter that travel all the way through the body, feed our colon. They keep us at a healthy weight. They modulate estrogen and progesterone production. They modulate thyroid conversion of T3 to T4. So they play a role in every part of our body. So we used to think, oh, that's just your thyroid just works on its own. We know now that it relies on the gut microbiome, like your washing machine. Your washing machine. So we used to just think, okay, your thyroid is like the washing machine. It just does its job. But really, the washing machine relies on a water supply, a power supply, and also powder. And that's what your gut microbiome, it's the helper to all these, your brain, so the gut-brain connection, yes. 95% of your serotonin is in your gut. We used to think it resided in the brain. These neurotransmitters were just in here. But the endochromatin cells that line our gastrointestinal tract hold our serotonin and dopamine. So if you've got So what happens over the years, so we get our gut microbiome from our mother vaginally when we're born, or if you're a C-section baby, you get it from the environment. You can still pick up from your mother and skin to skin contact with your father or your mother or whoever you're parenting, but also from the environment. So we develop a microbiome, so we can start with quite a very good one, or we can start sort of kind of behind the eight ball of not really having a flourishing inner garden. And then as we go through life, I always say to people, I'm born Catholic, not born Catholic, but about whether God's a male or a female. I always have a joke that God must be a man, because it wasn't a very good system that they did, because our beneficial gut flora are actually very easily disrupted from outside forces with medications or stress, exercise, all those sorts of things, and also our food. But our pathogenic bacteria, and we do have a pathogenic bacteria profile, like the bad ones, the E. coli, but that actually play a role in actually producing B vitamins. This is why this nuking method that people go down, and I'm going to nuke my SIBO, I'm going to nuke my gut with either antibiotics or herbals or things like that, don't work, because you also destroy your good bacteria. Because your good bacteria, like if everyone thinks about their garden, right? You've got garden, you've got beautiful basil growing. All of a sudden, a really hot day hits and your basil just about dies, but your weeds don't die, okay? And your bacteria is the same way. Your beneficial gut flora are the ones that provide all this energy for your body and basically have a role in every function in the body: inflammation, obesity, abdominal obesity, thyroid function, heart function, inflammation for things like rheumatoid arthritis or inflammation in the bowels with colitis and ulcerative colitis. What it does is, so when they're not around, they can't keep it healthy. So outside forces happen, as well as food. Beneficial gut flora just go, and they no longer provide. So because they are dying off, they can no longer provide these short chain fatty acids for your body to flourish. Unfortunately, pathogens, they also secrete a thing called lipopolysaccharides, but they're inflammatory. So what happens when we've got beautiful garden of basil, something hits, either food, lifestyle, that dies off. Our weeds go, wow, this is great. I've got lots of space here to flourish and grow and all the rest of it. But unfortunately, like weeds, those ones where they've got the little fluffy thing on the top and you blow it and then it creates another 100 weeds. What they do is they are very strong, they're very prolific, they grow anywhere and they flourish. And what that causes is what we call dysbiosis. So if you look at the scales, we want something like this. We need some pathogenic bacteria, they play a role in our body and are beneficial. But then the scales go like this, and we have what we call dysbiosis, where we have more pathogens than beneficial bacteria. And what they secrete is inflammatory. So they're living microbes, but what they secrete are inflammatory markers. So we start to become inflamed. And then inflammation begets inflammation, because again, when we're inflamed and we ache and we pain and my mental health is not great, we don't want to do things. And it causes that vicious cycle going down, where it basically keeps pathogenic bacteria alive, and our beneficial bacteria aren't getting fed through diet and lifestyle. So they're a living being. You can't see them. I mean, billions of them can be on the end of a little bobby, a little pin, top of a pin. So we can't see them, but what they are is just microbes, different microbes that we know now play a role in our body. We used to think they were just, I suppose, existing. What the heart does, that's heart. We looked at things on their own, the liver, the thyroid, whatever. Whereas we know now that everything comes from the gut up into feeding every part for managing our body, like the washing machine. It doesn't just because you got a washing machine, so just because you got a liver, it doesn't work. It needs all these other things, and you need to maintain it. And so we go through life, and where the reason why it hits so badly in our 50s and that, it's not, while it coincides with menopause, it's the coinciding with the menopause, but it's actually a lifetime of things happening to our gut microbiome and degrading, which then makes menopause so bad. I mean, when I lived in Japan and we used to talk about menopause, women there didn't suffer from the menopausal symptoms that we do, because their diet and lifestyle was more conducive, we didn't know back then, of keeping those beneficial gut flora alive and healthy, and then it fed back to women as far as hormone production. So it was that easy. Yes, of course, we stopped producing estrogen, but it was that slight move. Whereas what we have years of, kids, and then, teenagers. God, I mean, that'll throw anyone's gut microbiome off, and marriages and businesses and work and medications, and take a pill, and then some, too much alcohol, and then, like we're like this, and we're basically having a garden that we are just bombarding with things from the bottom up and the top down, until we arrive at our 50s and kids have left or leaving, and we just go, and we stop, we go, and we look and we go, oh my God, what's happened?
Yes.
We sort of blame it on menopause, but it's not. It was the slippery slide down, all those years of degrading our gut microbiome, and then it just is the perfect storm. Menopause, the drop in estrogen comes with a dysbiotic state, an imbalanced gut microbiome, and you've just got bang, and it goes off. And so what people will go, well, I was carrying a bit of weight, but suddenly I hit menopause and 10 kilos came on in a period of 6 months. And it's because it's sort of like, you've got a car and things start going wrong, and then all of a sudden one thing begets another thing. The radiator's not working properly, so it doesn't cool the engine, then the engine overheats, and then it just gives one thing, and all of a sudden your car goes bang and blows up. That's what happens to our body, especially for women. And men don't suffer the same thing, because they don't have those huge hormonal fluctuations that we do as we're going through.
Yeah, and I think, as you say, lifestyle either enhances or diminishes the gut microbiome. And I don't know, I was just listening to you talk then, and what was going through my mind was, well, we know that some, especially in Okinawa, I think it is in Japan, that's a blue zone where you've got people that are living much longer and healthier. And I think it's the fact also that we've stepped away from simple living. And, the big decluttering of everything's been the big focus over the last 10 years, although I think Marie Kondo has now changed her mind on a few things. But, we declutter our house, or we declutter, our wardrobe, but we are not addressing perhaps the stresses of life that are impacting our body. And from what you're saying, has a great influence on our gut and the microbiome there. And that sort of then starts a rolling pattern of being unhealthy, and our gut not being able to provide what we need for a healthy lifestyle. And of course, the perimenopause and menopause symptoms hit. And I also think, like, for example, going back to my mum's generation, one, they never talked about menopause, but they didn't
No,
seem to be, it didn't seem to be a
be a
big
big
thing
thing.
then. Now, it might have
Mm.
been that they just had the stiff upper lip and they didn't sort of talk about it. But I just wonder if it was also, too, that back then we didn't eat all these processed foods and we had a much simpler
Sure.
diet. Our lifestyle was simpler. Most of us didn't have a car, or we didn't rush here and rush there. And then while we're driving, we can send 20 messages using Siri and we can do
Mm.
this and that. And that would surely have an impact on our health and the microbiome from what you're saying.
Yeah, well, we've found, in fact, about 95% of the research in the last 5 years has all been around stress. And this one that always gets my clients, basically, that this is from a research study, even a single 2-hour exposure to a short-lasting stressor significantly changes the community profile of the microbiome and can result in abrupt changes to potentially lead to negative health outcomes. So people go like that, and people go, oh, well, I'm doomed because I've got teenage kids and a job and all the rest of it. So what we know now is that stress has a greater impact than on food, but also that stress actually, I know in this time when I was coming through and I was working, I came back from Japan and I was running an English language school at a university, and I was traveling and I was doing all these things and that. And so when you get stressed, the decisions that you make around food and lifestyle. Well, I would come home from work and I, give me a glass of wine, have a glass of wine, another glass of wine. I haven't got time. Then I don't feel like dinner, or have a little bit of dinner, then fall asleep. And then the next day get up and wake up with a coffee because I can't function. And then I don't feel like eating because I'm not hungry. And then on all the rest of it. So unfortunately, stress is not only the impact on the microbiome, but it impacts everything else. Now, women always say to me, well, Nat, are you crazy? Like, how do I not be stressed? I've got a job, got a mortgage, I've got, 1 or 2 kids at home still, and they're, like teenagers are like egocentric maniacs, and I'm trying to help them, they're getting through uni, and then my husband's this, and we're doing this, and all the rest of it. How do you possibly do that? Well, you don't stop living. You don't just go, okay, well, I'll just, move myself onto a yurt and just block myself away. What it is what I work with women a lot around that. I work with a behavioral health specialist too that works with the stressor, is changing the perception, okay, and working out where you put yourself first in that journey of those things. So, yeah, I've still got 3 adult kids and grandkids and aging parents, and, all those things are happening. I run 2 businesses. We're not saying stop those things. We're actually working out how to put ourselves first and then do those things. So you don't stop life happening, but your perception of and how you react to is a different thing. I remember in Japan, I was a mental driver, and I would be screaming and beeping, get out. And then when I came back here, I was the same thing. And honestly, my kids was just, it was very stressful for them to be in the car with me, or anyone for that matter. And I thought, well, my thing was I was running late and then going crazy at people and all the rest of it. But if I change things to go, right, if I sort myself out first, if I 10 minutes earlier, and if I leave, and then it doesn't matter, and what do I care that they want to go in front of me, and okay. And now I'm a very, very calm driver. And I know a lot of people go, well, like, that's not me. And the problem is, I think, well, not the problem. I think the issue is that when I was of that age and going mental about everything and driving, going crazy, come home, the kids be on the couch, hi, Mum, how's your day? And I look at the mess, and then I'd go, would explode, and the kids go running like cockroaches and all the rest of it, is that when you try and tell someone that, look, okay, you've got to try to put yourself first, and you've tried to manage your stress and all the rest of it, you don't know how to do it. You go, I can't do it. You don't understand. I've got this and that. And the problem is that everyone's trying to do everything at once, almost like you said, the Marie Kondo. They're trying to declutter this and do all these. They're doing. You actually want to not do. So we try and do. Let's declutter this and let's do this and let's do this. It's about the undoing, the not doing. That is got to be the focus. And it's almost we've got to relearn how to do that. We've forgotten how to do those things. We're tied to our phones. We're tied, and then we're wired and we can't sleep. And then, of course, sleep and the circadian rhythm of the gut microbiome are intrinsically linked.
Yes.
And so you can't separate the two. Bad sleep, it affects the health of your gut microbiome. Your beneficial gut flora rely on that sleep to actually flourish. So beneficial gut flora don't just rely on food, where they obviously need a source, just like your ground. You've got plants in the ground, they need water, but they also need sunlight and they need the weather to be the right conditions. And so for us, food is one that certainly feeds it, but those outside conditions are the stress, which is like a cyclone that can destroy it, and all those other lifestyle things of sleep, etc., which like the plant needs. The plant needs the sunlight and the photosynthesis. If it's in the dark all the time, it dies. So our body very much relies on all those things. So yeah, I think the hard one with the stress is people go, how do I? And I suppose
it's a big one, that one, setting the boundaries, learning to say no. We're programmed to be the nurturers and we want to be there to help, but and then suddenly you put your hand up and say, well, hey, hang on a minute, I really need something for me, and it's suddenly, oh, well, you're being selfish. So that's sort of the story that we're being told, and we have to deprogram our way of thinking, because if we don't look after ourselves, we won't be able to look after anyone else either, because we're not capable. We'll get sick, or so really logically we should be looking after ourselves first if we want to continue to do all those other things. So
you're so right. When I was unwell, everyone had to look after me, and I basically made everyone's life a nightmare. So had I been more selfish and looked after me first, I wouldn't have been a burden. But because I didn't, then you actually become the burden. It's quite it's quite ironic, really.
That's right. And people probably feel like you've got aging parents, as you said, so that's a responsibility. Now, what will happen to them if you fall over, if you're not well, if you're taken out of the picture? What's going to happen to them? So I think we've got to forget about this feeling, being termed selfish. I think it's actually should be coming from everyone around us who are expecting so much from us, to be supporting us and to say, well, what do you need? Because if your needs are met, if you're healthy and you're feeling good mentally as well, they're going to get the benefit as well. So, I think that we've got to just change the narrative a bit there. But what I wanted to ask you is, now, my listeners and myself, we're sort of thinking, oh, this is all good stuff.
Too hard.
But no, not too hard. But the question is, where do I start? What little things? Because, most of us sort of look at something at the big picture and we get overwhelmed. And I'm a big person of having my big goal, but then I break it down into little baby steps. So what are some simple shifts we can do to build the confidence, I think, in us to keep going? What's some things that we can do today, even, to start rebalancing and replenishing to alleviate all those symptoms we've talked about today?
Yeah. So one of the big things that we get our clients to do, which is a really helpful, is to do a me schedule. Okay. And because if, like we said, you talk to someone, you go, well, I haven't got the time, but we actually all have the same 24 hours. We all have, let's say, 8 hours sleep. So that leaves us with 16 hours of waking hours. And some people don't even get 8 hours sleep. Let's say 8 waking hours. Let's say 7.5 is work plus travel time or whatever. That's 8. We actually have 8 hours up our sleeve. Now, if you look at anyone, someone would say, well, I don't have 8 hours. Like, where did that go? I don't have 8 hours of free time, but we actually do. So what I say to women is, just on a piece of paper, jot down what time you wake up and what time you go to bed, and go, all right, that's, so I've got 16 hours waking hours. And then just jot down, right, okay, right, if I was to put my main things in breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a snack time and all the rest of it, and where I get home and what happens at this time, where can I delegate some of those things so that when I get home, right, and that's probably the main thing, the before work and the after work is when it gets sort of crazy, or we've got so much how to do it. But if you can look at it, so even if you look at, okay, this is, I get home from work at 5:30 and then comes dinner and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. The really important part is to bring it down after, when you get home. Of course, that's where it ramps up for most women, right? I've got to start, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. That's where, all I say to women is delegate an hour, okay? 1 hour. Delegate that out. So if you come home and that's where you go to the shop and you pick up a few things and you start doing all the rest of it, you need to delegate that. So you say to the kids, now, one of the big problems that women have, they'll say is, oh, but they won't do it well, they'll muck it up, they'll leave a mess. Okay, well, you can't do everything, you can't spin a million plates, you're going to be gone, and then you're going to be in the state where you're going to be so ill and everyone's going to do it anyway. And you know what the worst part of it is when you're really sick? I was in bed and I was watching, because of course no one has the same standard as, with most women, right? And because I couldn't move, I was watching this filth like around me, like towels dropped or this, that, like my husband would carry me into the lounge room, I'd sit there and I'd just go, oh my God, the mess, and I couldn't do anything. Whereas had I earlier delegated and got kids to learn and do, or a little bit, or make a mess, now clean it up or whatever, let them experience it, I wouldn't have had to suffer. Well, we do really create our own monsters. So one of the biggest thing is to try and delegate an hour. Again, women make the mistake as they go, right, I'm going whole hog and I'm not going to do anything, or I'm going to come home and I'm going to hit the gym for an hour and all the rest of it. You want to actually bring things down, not back up. And that's the mistake. So delegating that first hour when you come home, and one of the really best things that you can bring it down, and knowing how much stress has a detrimental impact on our microbiome, is to barefoot walk. And the reason by barefoot walk, and I was actually away on the weekend and my daughter came up for the day and she talked about 27 things going through your mind. So you come home from work and women will do this thing, they'll put on their sneakers and they'll boom, boom, boom. But the whole time, your mind is going blah, 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 blah. So understand that these stresses, these 2-hour single stresses, they're not someone dying or losing jobs. They are worry, overthinking, frustration, resentment. That's the stressor. What happens in our mind is what sets off the HPA axis, the hypothalamus pituitary axis, adrenal, cortisol, adrenaline, all the rest of it. We keep surging ourselves with things. It's like we keep pulling the pin out of the grenade and it just keeps going off. We need to put that pin back in the grenade. And so I said to my daughter, let's go for a walk, a barefoot walk, right? So we took our barefoot walk and we were walking across the road with pebbles and then on the thing and then on the grass. Well, because when you barefoot walk, you have to be in the moment. It is I know mindfulness. I mean, I don't kind of like that word because we sort of, that mindfulness has got a bit bandied around and, things just get ruined. I mean, words sometimes get ruined. But what you are is because you are barefoot and walking, and you can take a pair of thongs with you just in case something gets a bit too, hideous, or there's prickles on the grass and you have to cross over to something else or wherever. And what you're doing is that you have to slow down and you're in that, you're in the moment. You're going, and we walked this thing. And my daughter, we got to the end and we went out and she goes, man, that's amazing. I just didn't think about anything. And the reason is you are there.
Focused.
So And, you know, it's a real fallacy about speeding up with exercise or the rest of it, because when we over exercise and we do really long endurance things, we actually raise the levels of CRP, which is a C-reactive protein, an inflammatory protein in our body. Now, that's fine. Do a marathon run, then it comes back down. But when we keep up this very high endurance and fast living, in addition to the high lifestyle that we've raised those levels, we're again creating that perfect storm that we're raising things over and above, and basically, like COVID, causing a cytokine storm in the body with these C-reactive protein cytokines creating this inflammatory state. So the biggest thing that women can do is, and even if you go, right, I'm going to get out of the house for 15 minutes. You know, look at that gap and go, well, look, I think I could get the kids to chop that up, or my husband to do this, or whatever. And where can you grab 15 minutes to bring it down? Because when you bring that down, especially after work, and especially with that barefoot walk, what happens is when you come into it with a different outlook. It's like ever try to reason with a kid having a tantrum? I mean, you've done probably with you can't do it. They're all over it. So the same thing. We come home and we're trying to see things clearly, but we're like, oh, the mess. I've got to put a load of washing on. I've got to do that. What's tomorrow? Where are you going? Where's that? And look, I have women that have got kids that go, oh, I've got to take my kid to soccer. And I said, okay, well, what do you normally do? Oh, I normally sit in my car and I'm on my phone, or I talk to other women. I'm like, why don't you grab a couple of those women, take your sneakers off? Oh, but it's cold. Yeah, that's okay. You're not going to freeze to death, or it's wet, or it's and take a barefoot walk. And I have women now who go to soccer and they've got this tribe of other women with them. They're my client, but they're taking other women and they're doing this walk around. Kids are playing soccer. Things don't change. You can still walk and talk, but everything is coming down, because it's really hard to go, like, you're walking, and even if you've got a heated conversation, you touch something that's cold or something's a bit sharp, you go, oh, you're back in that moment. It's almost it's like diffuses any anger. So my biggest thing to women is do that every day. Bring it down, not up. You've got to bring it down. And then when you come home, you're in this calmer state that you can look at things and either delegate or do in a more calm way. So you're bringing down those cortisol levels, those nightly cortisol inflammatory cytokines at a time, which then helps you sleep better. And just that one simple lifestyle shift then you go, oh, I feel like I can, you know, I rather than falling asleep on the couch, because what happens is cortisol levels, and then when they drop off, we go, oh, someone puts a movie on and we're like, we wake up the end when the credits are going and go, oh, and then we're awake 2 hours later, we fall into bed with it. What you do is you stop that cascade of that vicious cycle that begets that high level of cortisol. And so you get a better sleep. You wake up in the morning, you don't feel the same need to go, I need a coffee because I can't function. Do you know what I mean? So
yes,
that one little thing, if I can ask your listeners to go, and you know, the biggest thing is, at first what women say is that, but why do I look stupid? And I'm like, well, why do you care what other people think? I mean, I remember we were barefoot walking just the other week, and our neighbour was out the front. I mean, you never see neighbours anymore because, you know, the doors go up and doors go down, but we've got a very old house, so we sort of see everything. And he goes, I said, we're going for a walk. And he goes, I think he thought we were senile. And he goes, I think you've forgotten your shoes. And I said, oh no, we barefoot walk. And we purposely go on the concrete's hot, and then it goes grass cool and all the rest of it. And he goes, why do you do that? And I said, because, you know, talking about the relaxation, all the rest of it. He goes, well, that's really cool. And so we get embarrassed what other people think, but really people aren't really caring that much about what we're doing. But if you are really worried, then and someone asks you, tell them what you're doing. I'm trying to bring things down. My life is up here. And I don't think any woman is going to say, oh, well, that's ridiculous. Every woman goes, I know with my clients who get other women on board, they go, oh my God, yeah, I know what you're feeling. Well, you know, I'll try anything. But
yes.
And it's almost, again, it's the not doing. See, instead of doing this, boom, 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 putting this, moving my heart rate, blah, 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 blah. We are not doing. We're really, really slowed down. Yeah. And we're not talking about not having energy. You know, we're not talking about not, I mean, people think that energy equals stress. It's not. I'm a very energetic person, but I don't feel the stress. My perception changes. But you've got to bring it down, bring it down, bring it down. And then what you want to do is you want to bring it down further. And then that gets the start into being able to make those changes. You can think about what you're going to, you come home, you feel more relaxed. You don't want to grab for some crappy food and give me the wine and all the rest of it. I mean, my biggest thing of stopping coming home, that was the first thing I did. And it was the research we read about grounding and barefoot walking and all the rest of it and the gut microbiome. And I thought, I used to come home, wine. And what happened is I went out, I just got home and said to the kids, like, I want you to do this while I'm at the thing. I'll be back in whatever. And I used to start 15 minutes, then I went 30, and then I went an hour barefoot walking. And when I came back, I didn't feel like a glass of wine. So again, so the cycles it breaks, it's like the gift that keeps on giving. It just, and so I didn't want wine. I didn't grab a wine. So, and then I would go, oh, I'll have a bit with dinner. But usually by then I'd had 2 glasses before I even got to dinner.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was going mental. So yeah, if there's one thing that I would say to try and put in your day is barefoot walking. At the end, wherever it is, if you're a shift worker and you come home and it's, you know, that time in the morning that it's up here and you need to bring things down, well, then do it there. Wherever it fits, wherever it's at, bring it down. And that has a huge impact on your microbiome.
And we're sort of coming towards the end now, so I haven't really touched on questions like I was just interested about what sort of diet. And when I say diet, I don't mean, you know, diet in the way they say now, sort of the sorts of foods we should be eating. Is it a matter of if you want to start today, for example, just trying to cut back on the processed foods, the alcohol, things like that? Is that a good start, cutting down on the sugar, the things that we all know are not good for us? Or is that just being a bit too basic?
No, it's not. But what I always say again, start slowly. So the general thing with most women, when when we talk about diet and all the rest of it, we're starting, obviously there's so many things you do. So fiber feeds the gut microbiome. The gut microbiome relies on fiber. It takes fiber, ferments it, creates these short chain fatty acids. Well, fiber is not in eggs and meat and chicken and fish and all the rest of it. I'm not saying about, because I'm certainly not a vegan and I don't believe in any diet per se, but that's not giving you any fiber. It's always your fruits, your nuts, your veggies, your legumes, lentils. And then a lot of people go, well, I can't eat lentils or legumes because I bloat. Well, that's because they're always doing too much, right? So what I say to people is make the tiny change of morning tea and afternoon tea, right? Because they're the big ones where we grab a muffin. That's where the processed foods come in. Most people are pretty good with breakfast. They'll go, oh, we'll have a piece of toast and smash an avocado, and I might have a smoothie, or even have some cereal or something like that. Now, there's certainly better ways to do those rather than packet Nutrigrain, having a, you know, whole food granola or something like that that's not steeped in sugar. But most of us don't really have the big issue with our main meals. It's the in-between things that we go, mid-morning, coffee and a muffin and a Mars bar or this recipe. So what I say to people is decide for the week, go down and get the variety is key. So just our microbiome relies on variety, not just fiber, but different types of fiber. Okay, so the fiber in an apple is different to the fiber in an orange, to the fiber in a kiwi fruit, to a banana, etc. So what you do is you go, all right, I've got 5 days at work in front of me. So that's, if I do morning and afternoon snack, that's 2 pieces of fruit a day. That's 10 pieces of fruit. I'm going to go down to the shop on the weekend on Sunday. I'm going to buy 10 pieces of fruit and I'm going to try to make them different as much as I can, because sometimes seasonally it's a bit hard. But at the moment you get a plum, a nectarine, a banana, an apple, and you're only buying one. right? Don't buy a packet because you're just going to throw it out. Just one. You might have to hide it from the kids in the fridge and put a big sign on it saying don't eat these, because they tend to eat everything that you put aside, even though then they don't want it. So and what you do is you make, so when you and a handful of nuts. So go and get some raw unsalted macadamias, and again, now we can buy nuts by a small amount. So sort of think, wow, if I had a handful of nuts in the morning and a handful of nuts in the afternoon, that's like 30 grams. That's 60 grams a day over 5 days at 300 grams. So I'll get a variety of different nuts, mix them all up, raw unsalted nuts. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my alarm on my phone, and at 10 o'clock, I'm going to have my apple and my nuts. Yeah. And again, that little change, because it's very satisfying, it's sweet. If you're really craving something sweet, there's nothing sweeter than an apple or blueberries. It's sweeter than a Mars bar. It's sweeter than a muffin. People go, oh, but I crave sweet. And also too, that little bit of savory, having the nuts. Also, when people go, I like this savory, I want that, you're having that. So again, just introduce that and that, because a lot of people will take dinner leftovers and all the rest of it. So generally that's not the issue, but it's that fall down of those snacks morning and afternoon. And when you make that one little change, and you just keep doing that every day, so you just, in the morning, 2 pieces of fruit, anything, put it in your handbag, take it to work. People go, I'm getting a Mars bar. Oh, I'll go and get my fruit. I'll join you, right? You have that. You are providing your body with the healthy omega-6s and 3s plus the all-important fiber. But what that little change does, so people all say, what's a diet? What can I follow? But make that little change first with your barefoot walk. Things come down, and you can think of that, wow, okay, I don't then feel like this for lunch. Actually, I'm not going to get takeaway. I feel like, because what happens is when we feed our beneficial gut flora, because they exert behavioral changes on our mind, what we do is they start to grow, and they make us want more good food. And then we want it. See, pathogens make us want salty, fatty, sugary food because they exert benefit. They exert changes in our mind. They make us irritable, overwhelmed, frustrated. Like, oh, give me that muffin, give me this, give me that. But what happens when you do that other change in your beneficial gut flora growth, you don't feel like it anymore. Yes, while fiber is really good, all fiber things that aren't processed, don't get a processed cornflakes or Nutri-Grain or whatever. Get a whole grain muesli or make your own. Bit of oats, I've got on my website on the blog, 5 simple breakfasts, 7 simple breakfasts that you get. I've got lots of little freebie things that you can do, that you can insert. But again, people go whole hog. They go, right, that's it. I'm starting this Monday. I'm getting this. They throw everything out. They do this. And by Tuesday afternoon, they're deep in a Mars bar and a coffee going, oh, blown that. So don't think about blowing anything. Bring things in. And so you're moving those snacks out. You're bringing something in. You do that. You feel better. And then you make the next move. I mean, I know you do marathon running and all the rest of it, and I've got friends that do it, where they didn't wake up in the morning and do 42 Ks. They started with a 500-meter walk or a 1 kilo walk, walk, and then they built it up, and then 2, and then 5, and then, because that makes, then you don't hurt yourself or damage yourself, or you keep the motivation up. With the same thing with your body. Barefoot walk, lunch snacks, and then that snacks, mid-morning and afternoon. And even if you don't feel hungry, make yourself have it. Just sit there as you start. People always wait for the hunger cues, but it's always too late. Just give yourself, go, 10 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and go, being on my thing, I'm going to sit down, and I'm not going to do my phone. I'm not going to do anything. Just going to sit, and I'm going to eat those snacks. And that's a huge change that women can do. And I know a lot of your listeners are like, well, that's not going to cut out. I need more, but it's more is the problem.
Yes.
Less is the answer.
That's right. And we're just talking today about what you can do today to make these little changes. If obviously I'm going to be putting all your contact details in the show notes so that people can contact you, because I know you have a program, and I know that, if women do want to make substantial changes, they can start with the little tips we've done today, but I'd encourage them then to reach out to you for a more personalised or to work with you to see what you can do to help them start, because I think starting is always a little bit, you need your hand held sometimes.
So, and I think you need that little cheer squad. I mean, you've done marathon running. You need others around you. You can't see, everyone's trying to do it on their own. Another mistake, we try and do it on our own. And women think they should be able to do it because they do everything else. But getting your health back on track is something you really can't do on your own until you get some momentum. Then you can keep going. It's not like you need someone forever, but you need someone to help you start.
That's right. And you are worth it. You are worth putting the time into making those changes to live a healthier lifestyle. Well, look, it has been lovely having you as my guest today, Natalie. But before I let you go, I'm going to ask you one question that I ask all of my guests, and that is, what does being a woman living well after 50 mean to you?
Well, I think it means, that's a good question. I think it means being, I don't like, again, the word happy, but what I am is I like me. I really like me, learning that I love me for how I nurture my body. Like loving me is nurturing my body, and living well after 50 means putting myself first, not selfish, but caring, and putting myself first, like the air mask that comes, the oxygen mask that comes in the hotel, so you can, in the planes, you can help others. My thing is living, what it means is putting yourself first, so that you can be there for everywhere, and going, wow, I really like me. I find that a lot of women don't like themselves, and I get that.
That is a huge thing.
I did not like myself a lot of years. I hated the way I acted, what I did, and how I did. And now I think living well is learning how to nurture yourself from the outside in, from the inside out, so that you don't, it's not about being happy. I have days that I'm miserable. No. But I can sit in that misery and not be beating myself up.
Yes.
So I think that's what it means to me.
And that's a great place to get to, isn't it? Where you are happy with yourself and who you are, because a load is just lifted off your shoulders, isn't it?
I know.
That's a great state to achieve if we can. So thank you so much, Natalie Woodman, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure to chat. I'll have to get you back onto the show, because we could talk for hours the way we've been talking today. So I'd love you to come back again, because
Thank you.
I know you've got a lot of information, but I'll direct everyone to your website, and I'm actually going to have a look at your resources as well when we finish, because you've got me motivated. I'm pretty happy with my health, but I think we can all do with a little bit of an audit, just to see how we're travelling and perhaps tweaking here and there. So thanks so much, Natalie. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, pleasure for me too. Thanks, Sue. Really enjoyed it.
Well, that was an interesting conversation that I had with Natalie Woodman, all about the gut microbiome and what we can do to live a healthier lifestyle. Are you going to start barefoot walking? It sounds good to me, because when you think about it, it's quite logical and a good way to be in the moment, especially if you're walking over those rough surfaces. And the other tip that she gave was having your morning and afternoon snacks with perhaps a piece of fruit and some nuts, and keeping that variety up. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the episode. I know I have. And if you have, I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments. Leave me a like, and also share it with a friend who I know will benefit from the conversation. So that's it for this episode. Until next time, remember to live well, enjoy life, and most of all, be a woman living life your way. Bye for now.